Smile,
Mother
Amy.
of Venus.
Here we go. I always forget. Oh, wow. Look, the
Hi
dance
from the,
collective is in like coats.
yeah. Hi from the penitentiary.
Yes. Amy has not
Yeah.
yet been released, but we're working
Yeah,
on it.
I hope to be released soon. And maybe if you guys can, put a nail file inside a cake and bring it to me.
They
Please
don't allow
break me out
food
of
in
jail.
the library, Amy.
Jail
Sorry.
is also the Mashpee Public Library because I have no power from a hurricane.
Hurricane. Yeah,
This is dedication.
this is dedication. Dedication and desperation, I would say.
Yeah, if somebody suddenly comes in here yelling at me for talking this loud, stressful.
You're busted.
Yeah,
It's okay.
busted.
We'll just have the chorale do some background music and singing, and we'll be
Yeah,
fine.
there's so many parts to this Feedback Friday today. I hope you guys are really, really excited.
We are. It's going to be fabulous.
And Rosalind is by far our best dressed guest.
Absolutely.
Coming to us in shimmers.
Spangles.
Shimmers and
Spangles.
shine, baby. Shimmer and shine.
What do you call those?
Sequins.
Sequins.
Sequins. Not
The
like
big ones.
paillettes.
Big ones.
Big,
of course.
big quins.
No, sorry,
Yeah.
big sequins.
Oh,
Kathy
They're
still
quite
says
large.
gunny sack, so
I
she
know, I'm
probably
sorry.
calls them some weird name.
paillettes.
Paillettes.
I always dress for dinner, ladies. So, you know, it's tea time here. So
You're ready.
Yeah. I'm dressed for unlike my high school arts and crafts teacher, the way that I dress now.
I'm dressed to work in the warehouse.
Great.
you've got
Okay,
it all covered.
that's right.
Everything's covered.
Right. Captains of industry here.
Oh,
Shall we, Amy?
Reese Honeycutt and Diana here. Okay, great.
Here we go.
Oh, are you ready?
I am ready.
Is everybody muted except for, yeah, okay, all right.
Here we go.
Library voices. Okay. Hey, let's hope it all works. Right?
Well, it's the end of the week. Now where you been? Well, now it's Feedback Friday, so come on in. Come sit down and stare at your screen. We got a presenter that you never seen. We're Feedback Friday, we're on the loose. We'll be the train, you be the caboose. It's Feedback Friday with Kathy and Amy. Mashed potatoes and the gravy. It's Feedback Friday all day long. Feedback, feedback, Feedback Friday.
Well, good morning, everyone. You don't even know what happened trying to get this one together. We've got international visitors. We have Amy, who is in a jail cell, basically, and can't raise her voice too much. And then you've got me, and it's pouring rain here in Seattle, but what else is new? Hello, I'm Kathy Hattori. Welcome to Feedback Friday. And if you are not on mute, please mute yourself. And let's see, where are we? Today is episode 73. We have done this 73 times, and we're having a really great time. And even though Amy's got that, oh my God, get me out of here, look, she's really happy to be here. Roz is just naturally kind of excited and happy, so she's right on the mark here. And so today we welcome Rosalind Wyatt from London. Rosalind's a remarkable textile artist and a calligrapher specializing in writing with a needle. Really amazing, amazing pieces. And what's really cool in kind of looking at some of her work on her website, you see that she's taken both spoken word and handwriting and created it into a textile that is evocative of the person and the speaker. And I just think that's fantastic. It's a super unique approach and incredibly fascinating. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy the presentation today. Before we start, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for getting us through 73 episodes, even though Amy's in jail now. You know, she's still with us. Oh no. Oh no, it's even a smaller box. Oh my God, somebody help her. I mean, that's a problem. That's what happens when you have to use the public library as your Feedback Friday studio. It gets really weird really quickly. So a little housekeeping. She is in the middle of one of 2 nor'easters that are going to hit the Cape in the next day or 2. And so while she still has power, kind of, and internet, kind of, she'll be moderating and monitoring the chat on this call, which will open up after Rosalind's presentation. And that's where you're going to post all your questions today. And we'll have everybody muted for the presentation, but we'll open it up at the very end so you can all say hello and chat for a minute, and then we'll adjourn the meeting. The call is being recorded. Yes, thank you. We'll have a video copy ready later on this week if Amy gets power back. And that's kind of it right now. I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Roz in London, England, and welcome you to Feedback Friday. Roz, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm just completely in awe of everything that has all the events that have come together to bring all of us together. So thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Amy, for all your hard work. And hello to everyone. It's so good to be here. So we are going to start with a very short, well, it's a 4-minute video that a good friend of mine from Romania made sort of before the pandemic. And I think Amy is going to play that now. Cue video.
Yes, yes, I am. And it's beautiful. Let's hope weird things don't happen because it's too peaceful to be messed up. All right, hold on. Here we go. Here we go. Let's see. You guys see it okay? Yeah, okay.
Words are the inspiration and the starting point to each and every commission that I do. Words are always the starting point, the inspiration behind all of my work, whether it's visual, whether it's poetry, whether it's philosophy. The word informs the image. The word comes first. My name is Rosalind Wyatt. I'm a British artist, and I trained initially in calligraphy and then textiles. Well, I was brought up in quite an unusual school where we were taught meditation from the Eastern tradition, and we learnt the language of Sanskrit, which is a very ancient language, and we read ancient stories, ancient Indian epics. We would sing Sanskrit, and so that sort of opened up a different world to me, a much larger world than just our Western world. And it was when I started looking at Oriental brushwork and scrolls that I was really fascinated by it, because it looked like a painting to me, even though I couldn't understand what it was talking about. The brush strokes were so alive, they were almost like humming, vibrating, that I wanted to know more about it. The body is an important tool, so if you want to make a mark really fully, then of course you're going to prepare your body just with simple exercises just to get the breath moving and to make sure that you're not sort of holding any tension. And then you make your mark, then you use your breath. So there's never a division between the mind, the body and the heart. It's all three coming together. I do sometimes really love to paint from nature, directly from nature, just, you know, a tree or sketching. But I think there's something very magical about recalling something in your memory, like recalling the mountains of Romania, you know, and just seeing what comes off the end of your brush. And I'm always fascinated by that process of memory and recollection and creativity. With textile, you suddenly have a whole new canvas. You know, textile is softer. You have the whole provenance, the whole history of a piece of textile. You know, the cloth that we wear close to our skin. It's a very intimate, it's very emotional material. The reason I, meditate and I study philosophy is because I want to discover who I am and what I'm doing here. Life is hard, we inevitably have to face hardships. But essentially, if you give people wholeheartedly what pleases you, then I think that's a pretty good way to live your life. Imagine the whole of life was like one big concert. You are a note in a world song. Imagine that song was as large as the world, and you were just really tuned into that the whole time. And if you were out of harmony, then okay, the song's going to change a bit in a minute, so let's just stay with it, and then it'll harmonize. It's a very different view on, you're not fighting life all the time, you're riding it. Hello, my name is Rosalind Wyatt and I'm a visual artist and I love words.
Thank you, it worked. It worked. So we're now going to move on to a presentation. I've been writing a lot during the pandemic, and it's also my 50th year. So after 25 years of practice, I've just written a bit of a sort of memoir of my creative journey. And I'm just going to read it to you. And I'd be really interested to hear how it strikes you. But, just zone in and zone out. There's nothing. I think that's the lovely thing with words. You can just let them wash over you. So we're going to start with the first slide, please, Kathy.
One moment, Rosalind.
Sure. So, my voice in a mark. My earliest memory is of the human voice, an octave of notes like strange music, because actually this voice is an extraordinary instrument. When we come to shape sounds into words, then they carry a message called language. For me, it's where they're coming from that counts. If they come from that deep universal source, then they travel and their trajectory is far-reaching and lasting. What we call life is a line connecting my space to your space. Listening for that personal path is to discover, uncover, and express that as creatively as possible. My first love was theatre. I was mesmerized by it in the act of being part of an audience, the grandeur of that dark space, thought becoming sound, being taken on a spoken journey, and the applause that celebrated that. Art discovered me early, and I learned about what worked by watching and listening to the players on a stage. Some actors seemed effortless and genuinely, and some less so. I secretly longed to be out there, out front, on stage. It was a kind of physical knowing of how it would feel and what would be required. But that was then. So how does one come to use voice as a mark? By studying calligraphy, of course. That endless repetition, a systemized craft that wanders into archaic territory in search of perfection. Each letter steeped in beauty, balance, and harmony. Then I asked, how can I bring that electric power I felt on stage onto a page? All creative paths testify that it involves determined journeying, of digging deep, waiting for the right moments of resonance. A perpetual question remained. So you can form these beautiful letters, but where are you? Another space opened up, more quiet this time, with different earthy smell. It was that of written ledgers of books and manuscripts, following storylines in pictures and words, a pastime I have found endlessly comforting since childhood. So when I get to actually make a book from scratch, source the paper, fold the text block, prick the page, rule the line, sharpen nibs, write page after page, this desire becomes fulfilled. But that's just paper. What about manuscripts with a capital M? Should we go to the next slide? I choose a hide of vellum, thank you. Realizing that this was once a living creature, this ancient preparation of vellum is a gut-wrenching extravagance, so much process to create a writing surface. Imagine picking up a quill, nature's own winged messenger, and creating this perfect union of purpose. My first revered calligraphy teacher explained this perfectly. He said that in micro, the nap of the skin is sanded and raised to reveal extraordinarily fine hairs, which then the line of ink embraces. Oops, have you lost me?
No, we see you.
Okay, good. So this explains to me the longevity of manuscripts and why we choose them to write our laws and constitution, store them in a fire-clad tower at the Palace of Westminster. Remarkably hard-working documents, a passport that would make any 21st century traveller blush. Let's have the next slide. Yeah, okay. One day after my calligraphy degree, a process I described as arduous as learning to write again, I thought, this steel straight-edged nib is doing my head in. It's hard and restrictive and sometimes unforgiving. I was searching for freedom. Just give me one letter that pulsates with life. I pondered over more books to discover long hanging scrolls written in a language I didn't understand. A light bulb flickers on. Here are lines like waterfalls that twist this way and that and seem slow and then fast. I'm excited by them, and off I go in search of that source. 1 year later, I find myself in Tokyo studying Zen brushwork. Japan takes me to her heart. Sitting in an unheated dojo in the middle of winter in complete silence, Sensei walks down the middle, and we all bow to acknowledge the master. As we bow, it's a plea for enlightenment, and then we are struck lightly on the back. I try and fit in with my clumsy Western ways, and am constantly tested by the weather and the persistent message that I need to soften to the line and move from my belly in full breath. We all spend a lot of time appreciating the quality of the line, and very little time, it seems, actually making them. But there is a completeness in this learning that I know is on form because of how I feel throughout my month's travel. Slowly but surely, that silent, mysterious Japanese aesthetic fills a dark, gaping void deep inside, and like the Shinkansen train that hurtles me back from Koyasan to Kyoto, with the beat in my ears of Aretha Franklin's Respect, I realize that this new energy fire must be realized. It's another watershed moment. Let's have the next slide, please, Kathy. The click that takes place in my brain is that line between calligraphy, painting, and poetry. A borderline obsessed with the painted line and how artists harness emotion into one single brushstroke, making it intensely unique to their own voice. The rule of legibility bound to Western calligraphy is released to become a painted line, freely exhaled in what I call painting with words. Take a phrase of philosophy or poetry from a sage, it really doesn't matter which culture or source, but let it write you from within. It can create its own space within the living artist's self and explode out in a confetti of color and dancing form. It's that part of the psyche that Ted Hughes calls the organically alive, and one which goes on beyond any significant interference from the artist's will or conscious craftsmanship. This is pure theatre in all its sensuality. So this is how I began creating my unique form of canvas with textile and paper. This is old cloth, repurposed and covered with soft handmade paper soaked in starch. I'm making paintings from the ground up because that gives me time to think and allows the words to do their thing in that interior space. With this form, I can bypass everything non-relevant, coming to the essential truth, annihilate decoration, defy beauty, and kill craft, until I'm at a carefree place, totally immersed and working from free imagination. The challenge here is one of total non-interference to a creative message coming from who knows where. This process now takes a different arc back to myself, just like a word that goes underground. So I have to listen more acutely. Words once found on a page can be found in landscape in a vibrational hum. My working studio has become a global, movable thing, along with the word I carry inside. Opening up to an unknown space, finding the dream language playing there, playing hide and seek with sound. And what does that look like? Here's an indication. Next slide.
Do you see it?
I have frozen, so I'm just.
Oh, okay. So have I.
Okay, don't worry. I'll read on.
No,
Oh, there
it's
we go.
lovely.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really
we've got it.
lovely. We've
We've
got a
got
rhythm
it.
going. Yeah.
We've got it. I look at handwriting as abstract marks in space. A good historian can tell you the type of writing tool, but the rhythm, pattern, and curve is to study the curves of your lover's body and gently caress them with your eyes. Slowly they open up and reveal themselves as in quiet conversation. I realize it's not at all different from appreciative eyes with which I study brushstrokes on an oriental scroll with its secret scent of incense as you unroll it. Then, of course, there is the emotional draw to certain handwritings, just as one is attracted by particular personalities and types. Underlying all this wonderful diversity, a profound truth is there in the same line running throughout. It's that line we make with our hands, through the breath, direct from the brain onto a surface. A line that is living and is as unique as the DNA that forms us on a microbial level. Let's have the next slide, please. How are we doing with time? Shall I keep going? Here's a word about needles. Okay, and the next slide, Amy, or Kathy, sorry. Here's a word about needles. They are just slithers of steel with eyes and points. How light they are, almost as light as a quill. Yet you have to grip them with a firm hold, otherwise they will elude you. And so you adjust your grip and control them. Just enough to make your mark. It's a balancing act of tension, sight, and sound. I often stitch in front of people. It's a sort of performance of stitching and storing. Here I feel safe and the audience feels safe, and here is an opening. It's a platform for conversation and dialogue and huge reciprocity. Later, I reflect on this and an idea lands into my heart with a charge. Next slide, please, Kathy. Let's make a tapestry for London, for Londoners and about Londoners, made by Londoners. And that garment there is the only garment I've ever dyed. So you can ask me about that because that might be relevant to our conversation. I speak about it and the audience asks, show us what you mean. Like this, I say, it's like a washing line of garments following the path of the River Thames. How long? Well, how long is the Thames in miles? 217 miles? Okay, let's create 217 pieces of calligraphy and cloth. Now there are 12 pieces completed. In all this, it's really about opening out to everyone. Next slide, please. I really want to know the story of so many people who have been forgotten, not only been forgotten to themselves, because I care and love people, and this is what makes me happy. The first garment I stitched was about the Tuke family. They cared in their own way too. They were Victorian doctors who looked at the state of medical treatment for the mentally afflicted and did something bold to change it. Bedlam Hospital was just that, terrible. A terrible way to treat those who simply needed, according to Quaker beliefs, loving kindness. I took up their baton and stitched the story of 3 generations of Tuke on 4 separate garments. Next slide, please. They were a family of doctors and artists, a brilliant and flawed mix of humanity and service. Next slide. Writing with a needle. I feel a very human connection to cloth. Our cities were built on the trade of it. Our streets were named after the manufacture of it and its associated tools. Our language is enhanced and enriched by it. So this picture is a story I stitched on a pair of Edwardian satin dancing shoes. So this is a return to the senses and a return to the archives. There are always archives. This wonderful primary source, which seems secret, intimate even. They've been there forever, before digitization occurred, preserved by those quiet custodians who appreciate our need to learn from history. And there is just enough ceremony to heighten the occasion. Book an appointment to meet a paper, letter, or written artifact that has not been opened since the day it was written, and discover its thrill. Next slide, please. Somehow I become part of their story. I felt closer to understanding their motives. It's a huge privilege, a learning curve. For those years, these stories become part of my life, their garments traveling with me wherever I went on trains and planes and to many different places. No letter or mark is pre-printed because there's another superimposition. No, we must tell the story as cleanly as we can without adding or subtracting, all to get to the essential truth. Work from your own primary source and the next primary source, which in the case of the dead are their remaining letters and belongings. By bringing these two together, we can create a bridge. There is no technique, just the document in front of me, beside the cloth and my needle and thread. I am not an embroiderer, just a storyteller with needle and thread. The audience always wants to know, how do you do that? So I have to work it out mentally, step by step. Then I share the process and learn to see how others can find their own mark and progress with their own narratives. Next slide. So this is an architect's drawing of how I envisage this tapestry following the path of the Thames. That orange ribbon is actually the path of the Thames, which is just at the bottom of my road here. Next slide. So I think I've overspoken a lot of this, but those are the garments that I was referring to from the Chuk family. The Japanese garment is called a hakama. It's a child's Meiji cotton printed garment worn for ceremonial days. And that tells the story of Hester and Corey. Hester was part of the Bloomsbury group, and she fell in love with a Japanese playwright, poet called Corey, Torihiko Corey. This was between the wars, and sadly he died of TB, but I had access to all of their letters, which I stitched onto this garment, really because there was one line in their letters that just really moved me. And he said, "Ah, yes, I shall work, the work that shall be our child." So that's why it's on a child's garment. Next slide. Now to the present day, an invitation to engage. When you write, write with breath. Be an empty tube of breath. Then the sound will come out better. When you stitch, stitch with ease and an open body, as if you are making great kusho marks in the sky. When you speak, speak from your deepest truth and honor that source. There is no hierarchy, just a moment to take a beat and choose the appropriate tool for the work. I want to exhale and express and say, so here I am, hugely unchanged, more Rosalind than ever, because it's a plumb line between heaven and earth and will remain forever so. And that's the end.
So wonderful. So amazingly wonderful. Thank you.
It's all right.
Thank you. Wow. Yes, you do deserve a cup of tea. So Amy is opening up. Yeah, we're all just sort of reeling from like our heads exploding with this amazing, poetic, beautiful song that you just sang for us. It's whew. Amy has opened up chat and people are going to start peppering you with questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy.
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah. Kathy, yeah, give me some of that. Kathy sent me a message saying, stop looking like you're preparing for the apocalypse, what my face looked like. But it was because I was really, I felt like I was in a lull, like this meditation with you for that entire time, even though it's some technical difficulties. That was really, really beautiful. And please come to my house and read to me for the rest of my born days. Okay.
Any day. And come to mine.
Okay, Suzanne is asking, I am curious to ask about the one garment that you dyed. Maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So that was a t-shirt that belonged to a young man called Johnny Benjamin. And it was a white t-shirt. And Johnny Benjamin is a mental health campaigner. And one day in, 2009, he had a schizoaffective disorder. And he went to Waterloo Bridge to jump. And he was wearing that t-shirt. And it was a busy Monday morning. It was in January. So it was quite unusual to see someone, in a white t-shirt about to jump. And people were just walking by. But there was one stranger who stopped. And that stranger spent 20 minutes talking him back from the edge. And after 20 minutes, the police came and Johnny was taken off to hospital and has spent the rest of his life recovering, really. But that stranger, it was a stranger on the bridge. And it was such a kind of amazing London story because unfortunately, this continues. There's a huge, the rate of suicide amongst young men is way too high. And that story just sort of touched all of us as Londoners. And I suppose because when Johnny recovered, he made contact and he found that stranger and they were reunited on the bridge. And I just thought, well, that garment needs to be part of the Stitched Lives of London. And incredibly for me, Johnny had kept a handwritten diary of his time in hospital. And he gave me that diary to work from. And there was one line in it which described his mental affliction in terms of indigo moods. And I just thought, I've got to drastically change this garment because this person because that's what happens, really. Well, that's what I understood from his writing. And I wish I had known you I wish I had known you, because I just thought, you know, a lot of my practice is just very intuitive and organic, and I just got a bottle of indigo and I kind of stretched it and I just painted it on, and I wanted the sky to be dark and it fading to light, so it's a reverse, and then we drew what he I had an assistant at the time who was a wonderful illustrator, and so she went to draw the view from the bridge and we printed that over the indigo. So that's the only time that's the only time I have drastically changed a garment, because these garments are given to me and that feels like such a responsibility. And yes, I can embellish them, I can add to them, but to sort of fundamentally change the color, just I needed to do that anyway.
Yeah, power of color with you know, like, anyways, yes, the power of color. I won't say any more about that. And I guess this question from Norma kind of ties into what you're saying a bit, or the tail end of what you are saying. Norma says, such beautiful work. Can you speak about how, well, she'd say how's such a garment to write on. So maybe how you find the garments that you do write on, maybe give some other examples besides like the t-shirt.
Well,
how about those beautiful jackets too? Like, I'm obsessed with them, of course. I've mentioned it to you, the cancer jackets, and I just posted an image of it today on Instagram.
Okay, so obviously I have to survive as an artist, and the concept for the Stitch Lives of London came first, and I just thought, I've just got to start this. You know, there was no money behind it. It was just me with this crazy idea. And so in the early days, a lot of the donations came to me through word of mouth. So the blue t-shirt is probably the most exceptional piece, in that it was given to me by Baroness Lawrence. Her son was murdered in 1994, Stephen Lawrence. Again, that's a huge London story. And that's extraordinary because of the trust she bestowed in me as an artist. And that was nothing to do with money. It was just us having a dialogue, a conversation, and her saying, have this athletic running top. Some of the others have been corporate commissions. So I think you saw a picture of a white satin Edwardian bodice. That was a commission from Fortnum and Masons. And they came to me and they said, we want you to tell our story of, you know, from the archives. And I found two stories that I felt sort of were really rich. One was the story of the Churchill family. So they used to shop at Fortnum's. It was their local grocery store. And I found this letter in the archives written by Churchill when he was 16 years old in Harrow, saying, I've just received a tremendous hamper from Fortnum and Masons. I mean, game on, you know, to find a letter, you know, with the young Churchill mentioning Fortnum's, you know, by chance. What are the chances of that? Anyway, so that Edwardian garment was really about this Edwardian story of a 16-year-old boy and his relationship with his mother, who was an American heiress. So that was Fortnum's. I've had the huge privilege to work with Burberry. They gave me a trench coat and they said, okay, so tell the story of the invention of gabardine. So I said, well, it's got to be about Ernest Shackleton, you know, and the Endurance expedition, because they were wearing gabardine when they tried to discover Antarctica. I mean, yeah, they were wearing Jaeger wool and gabardine. So I stitched, again, a lot of this involves research. You know, I go to the Royal Geographical Society, I go to the archives where you can actually read, you know, and hold the notebooks that Shackleton took on his expedition. So that was incredible. And then the latest one that you're referring to, Amy, was, again, it was from the Institute of Cancer Research, and a lot of these are really emotional, and I have to sort of get myself in the right space again and again, because they just sort of go to the heart, they go to the gut almost. And they said, okay, we want you to tell the story of cancer survivors and cancer patients in this very specific category of cancers of unmet need. So unfortunately, those are cancers that affect children, and they're often people who don't survive. So I was dealing with the handwritten testimonials of children. I mean, exquisite drawings. We had to narrow it down to 10, and the garments were the actual lab coats that belonged to the clinicians and the scientists working in the labs. And it's like, how, you know, how on earth do you tell the story of cancer and children who have not made it, you know, in a sort of light and positive way, you know, and that's the challenge for me. Anyway, I hope I did that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Can you talk more about the ribbon design for the Thames project? Is it something done or something you intend to do? Would it have stitched words on it?
So it would be a washing line of garments. So all of the garments I've talked about, imagine them forming a sort of a long tapestry, like a washing line of garments, but following the path of the Thames. So you would have Shackleton beside Churchill, beside Stephen Lawrence, beside, you know, a lab coat, beside a pair of socks. You know, it's like, that's what excites me, is jumbling up history and getting people to see history as a social commentary of how far we've come as a human race, and where are we going to. And so no, it hasn't been done, but I just have to keep holding on to that vision, really. I don't know how it's ever going to happen. I guess if there's a curator out there, it needs to happen, I think. But I just hold on to the vision, and I just keep going, and I just think step by step, garment by garment. Let's see.
You know, there's one of my favorite classes in college was the biography as history, and it was taught by Ursula Le Guin's husband, Charles, and it was incredible. But we had to read 5 biographies on one person. I chose Amelia Earhart, but it was interesting to see the 5 different ways that story was told, whether you were a feminist, whether you were into aviation. But it's interesting just being able to tell those different stories about history, about Shackleton, about, you know, different parts of history, and then but being able to use these little quotes, or kind of bringing those important words out and putting it on cloth or some textiles is just so cool. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
Let's see. You mentioned Romania a couple of times. Are some of your ancestors from there? And if so, has that had an influence?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a side of the family that, so my father is Jewish, or was Jewish, actually. He's not practicing Jewish, but I guess his mother was Jewish. So, but my mother is Italian. So it was a Jew and a Catholic coming together. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But yeah, so his family came from Romania. In fact, they're, I mean, way back. I think like 4 generations back. But when Mate Plaza approached me, I kind of thought, there's so much bad press. Well, there is over here. There's been a lot of just bad press about Romania and Romanians, and I wanted to sort of discover for myself what it was like. So before making that film, I actually went over there and spent some time in the Maramush region. And it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. I mean, talk about artisanal crafts, and yes, there's a lot of poverty, and probably even more so now, but they have this rich tradition of making and craft, and I'm sure textiles and dyeing, and you know, all there to be tapped. So yeah, way back, I think some of my Jewish ancestors were from Romania before they landed in the UK.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I guess I should have wore glasses today too. In addition to being exhausted, I'm like, okay. Thank you for this meditative journey into your work. I'm curious about your stitching technique, incredibly similar to hand lettering. Can we talk more about that?
Yeah, so it really happened because when I was at the Royal College of Art, I kind of felt a bit of a fish out of water, really. You know, I was there in the School of Fashion and Textiles and didn't really feel as if I was fitting in. You know, I felt most at home in a library, and I guess I sort of loved the quietness of and the studiousness of books and literature, and so it literally started with an idea of, can I write with a needle? And I would go to the British Library and I managed to blag my way into getting a reader's ticket, where you can actually look at some of the most extraordinary manuscripts. And, you know, I would spend time with, I don't know, 11th century, it didn't really matter what, you know, it could be a Palestinian scroll, or it could be something in Hebrew, or it could be an 18th century a letter from Guy Fawkes, or, you know, and I was like, it was so crazy. I just thought, I want to preserve this in a way. So it made me, by stitching it made me study more closely how people were writing, and the whole science behind handwriting, which has become a very intuitive thing. So I think that is what I'm still really interested in, is how people leave their mark. And of course, everyone says, oh, their handwriting is dreadful, but to me, it isn't dreadful. It's interesting. And that's the bridge between the Zen calligraphy, is like, look at your handwriting, you know, what does it say to you? What is it telling you? It's a mind mirror. It's a mark in time. And so by stitching it, I feel very close to the person who's left that mark. And I do it all by eye. I mean, I've stitched the handwriting of hundreds of people now, and each time it's a unique experience. So sometimes it's cursive, sometimes the letters are separate. Obviously, there's the slant of handwriting, there's the pressure. But essentially what you're looking at is the line. That's why I'm always talking about line, which is a breath. You know, so that's the essential truth of someone, their line.
I like how you just, I feel like every single thing you say is profound. I don't even know what to say after. Wow. Kathy, should we take one more question or?
Yes, let's
Okay, all
keep
right.
Rosalind talking.
I know, I love it so much. I love your voice so much, everything you say.
Oh.
And I just love that Kathy also likes you so much that she's abbreviated your name to Roz already.
It's the only way I cannot say Rose.
I've known Kathy for 10 years. She still calls me Amy and not like AIM or
My
Ames.
middle name is Rose. Kathy, my middle name is Rose, but that's too much. Rosalind Rose, why did they
Yes.
do that?
I
That's
don't know,
too
but it's
much.
fantastic. They
No.
really loved the flower.
I'm gonna start calling you
That's
Kat.
That's because my grandmother, my Jewish grandmother was Rose, and my Italian grandmother was Rosaria. So I guess they just sort of thought Rosalind Rose. You know, my father is obsessed with Shakespeare. So of all the heroines to, you know, I love Rosalind from As You Like It. Does anyone else know Rosalind from As You Like It? She's like tough, a real
Yeah.
feminist. So there we go.
Good.
Okay, all right, here's the last question, because the other part is I get kicked out of this room by the librarian.
Yeah.
Oh, got
So
it.
Kathy, I might leave you if the guy comes in to kick me out.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Let's see, here's a good one. What do you think about the way kids now don't learn how to write script?
I think
Yes.
I think we're missing something. I really, really think as educators, as parents, as ancestors, we are missing something, because, you know, you speak to any psychotherapist or psychiatrist, and when a child loses the ability to speak, they draw. So just give your children some paper, some space, and something to draw with. Just let them draw. And this last commission I had, the ICR, there was a 7-year-old child called Blaze who sadly passed away, and I could see in his drawing that he was so free in his drawing. And if that isn't humanity, then what is? And there is nothing simpler than allowing your child to just draw and make a mark. So it saddens me, and it's so simple.
Yeah. So agreed. So agreed that the mark making is just that's our connection, right?
Yeah.
It's so much our connection. Okay, we would love to talk for another hour or two. You're comfy with your tea, but Amy is they're just about ready to open up your jail cell, aren't they?
Yeah, I can't wait to break free and eat more than just bread and water.
Well, let me just quickly say thank you,
Yes,
Rosalind.
thank
It
you
was
so much.
amazing. We're very, 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 very honored to have you.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to talk about a couple of announcements. And those of you who are not familiar with Rosalind Wyatt's work, Amy is going to put her website in the chat. And as well, there's a few videos that she's done, interviews, and they're very fascinating. I would really recommend that you have a look at them. It really helps put your own work and your own ideas into some more context. So I think it's super, super informative. Okay, here we go. I saw that Nadine Allen was on the call today. I hope she's still here, but she was so great to have created some natural dye exploration kits that are watercolors for us. And those have been really fun, and they're on the site now if you're interested in those. Also, we were just talking about Romania and hand woven fabrics, and we're getting a restock, I think this coming week. So if we can get them all on the site, those will be available to you. They're hand woven vintage textiles that are really beautiful for dyeing or stitching or whatever, painting, whatever you wish. Also, Amy and I and the team have been working on this holiday gift page for holiday, because holiday, it's not so much that we're like so into holiday, it's that everything is so slow now that if you really want to have gifts from makers that you love, that you kind of have to start thinking about that. So we'll have that up next
What are
week.
you talking about, Kathy? It's not just about holidays or supply chains. These are the coolest people ever. Our
Oh, yeah,
Feedback
that
Friday
too.
presenters.
Absolutely.
I
Folks
mean,
that
I
have
see
been on
Lydia Iverson
Feedback
right now
Friday. I
for
see
what,
Heidi.
30 embroidery thread
Yeah,
colors.
there's
She's
going to be some
dyed for it.
amazing things. We have kits,
Alabama
we have
Shannon. You guys
books,
prepare yourselves
we
for
have
this.
stencils. We're going to have a couple of workshop specials. I mean, all sorts of things. So that's happening. And then finally, if you are in a state where you're having an election, you need to vote. I voted. I hope you guys all voted.
Yeah.
We're voting for our mayor. I don't know what you guys are voting for, but you got to vote. It's getting
have to
really important. So if you're shy about it, or if you don't know what to do, you just call me. I'll explain it to you.
Call me too, and I'll
Yeah.
tell you to get your butt there to
Yeah,
get voting.
absolutely.
We just
So
passed a plastic water bottle ban here by 2 votes. And if my
plastic
husband and
water
I had
bottle.
shown up,
That's right. They
come
would
on,
still have
show
plastic
up, show
bottles.
up.
Exactly. We just banned plastic bags like statewide. So it's happening. You guys need to be involved. These are the really important things. Even if it's your school board, think about it.
Vote.
All right, let me just talk really quickly about next week. We have Juliette Salin from Geneva, Switzerland. So yet another amazing person from not the United States. This is really exciting. She's an installation artist and sculptress. She does art installation, plant dyes, fiber arts, sensorial alchemy. And if you have a look at her website, which Amy will post, she has really beautiful kind of blossomy things that are just beautiful pieces of multicolored fabric that celebrate the body and the form in the natural world. Very exciting. So we'll see her next time. And anything else, Amy?
Yes, hold on. I was just getting Juliet's link. Yeah, something very important. Also, we have a bonus next week. We have a bonus episode after with Stony Creek Colors.
Oh, it's next week.
Yes, yes. It is
Yay!
next week.
Okay.
And they're launching a liquid indigo, and they're going to be doing a Kickstarter. We've had the opportunity to sample it already, and it's pretty amazing, but they'll be on for about a half hour after Juliet talking about the new liquid indigo, the campaign they're launching, and how you can support it. And it's pretty incredible. I know Rip Bowles from Sea Spell Fiber tried it out too, and she called it a quote unquote gift.
Beautiful.
So you want to learn about it.
Okay, anything else? We can now unmute, say hello, 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 and goodbye. If Amy disappears, it's because she's been kicked out of her cell. Rosalind, thanks again.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
So wonderful.
Thank you, Rosalind.
Thank
That was
you.
amazing.
Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Rosalind.
right.
In the 1920s, people start to move in here. They start to build their summer houses.
Oh,
Woo.
wow.
You know, this
What
wasn't
was that?
here, it wasn't
Okay.
fortified.
Yeah.
All these
Okay.
settlements along the river
I'm getting
are here
kicked out, so
because
I'm
of
gonna
the
go,
railroad.
Kathy.
Okay.
Stay safe, Amy.
Bye, you
Okay.
guys.
Bye. Bye all. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.